This is RTV6 News at 11, working for you.
Thank you for joining us on the News at 11. I'm Amanda Starantino.
And I'm Mark Mullins. We start tonight with the demonstrations taking place across the country and here in Indianapolis. The death of a black man, George Floyd, at the hands of a now former police officer has set off outrage and calls for justice. That former officer was charged with manslaughter today, but demonstrators are calling for action against all of the officers involved in Floyd's death and an end to police brutality.
And a demonstration has been taking place for several hours now in downtown Indianapolis. We're going to get right to RTV6's Cameron Riddle. Cameron, I've been watching your Facebook Live. You've been on the RTV6 Facebook page, and a lot of things have been changing just in the past 15 minutes.
Yeah, a lot of things have just changed in the last 90 seconds, too. On this side, things appeared to look clear, but I assure you, it's actually not. We were walking through the streets of Indianapolis, and just 3-4 minutes ago, the police, we were at the back of the line following the protesters who are now down there at the Capitol. But as the police came this way, they stopped and protesters started to engage. So what was the back where we were at became the front, and police started throwing tear gas. We just got tear gassed a few seconds ago. You can see right under the light, there's another one of the many tear gas bombs. That's hot, man, that's hot, it's hot. That, as you can see, is fresh. That's how hot it is because it just happened. I know we got to go this way, Dave. As you can see down toward the Capitol, those are protesters who, up until the police just tear gassed everyone, were peaceful. Now windows are being broken just past that Jack's Donuts restaurant and those buildings right in front of the state Capitol. I just saw someone bashing in the windows. This is a scene that looks a lot like other scenes happening across the country. Tonight, we talked with the Fraternal Order of Police President, Rick Snyder, about how this situation has boiled into this. Of course, this started with George Floyd getting shot and killed, Drayshawn Reed getting shot and killed earlier in this month. But then earlier this week, George Floyd killed by Minneapolis police. And the police that we talked to say all of this should have never happened because they can't understand how police let that happen.
As a human being and as a Christian, I'm dismayed by what we have seen.
As cities around the nation protest the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, police in Indianapolis say the actions of former officer Derek Chauvin are inexcusable.
As an officer, I'm completely disappointed, frustrated. As I'm known for saying, I am outraged.
On Twitter, Indianapolis Police Chief Randall Taylor says after 30 years in law enforcement, he cannot understand or justify the actions captured on video. Rick Snyder couldn't believe what he watched.
I was yelling at my television. I was yelling, get off of him. Why are you doing that? And then yelling about, why don't you turn him on his side, step back? The things that we're trained to do. Why aren't you doing that? I can't explain that. I can't wrap my mind around what was the decision-making that was occurring.
Snyder is the president of the Indianapolis Fraternal Order of Police. He says kneeling on a person's neck is not in any training manual.
It's not even we're not trained to do that. We're trained not to do that.
Snyder says even beyond the arrest, there were a number of poor decisions made in the aftermath by Minneapolis police.
The tactics and quite honestly, the lack of intervention like we saw overnight with the burning down of the police precinct and all the other property damage and loss of life.
All right. Okay. Hey, we are right in the middle of this. As I said, we tried to get we were at the back, and now we're right in the middle. As you can see, Jack's Donuts, we've done stories on that place. We're trying to back up. We were so much for social distancing, but Jack's Donuts right now, they are breaking the windows. Those are residences above this. I know the guy who owns this Jack's Donuts actually lives in this building. This is what's happening live right now in downtown Indianapolis. All of this tonight Daryl, all of this tonight, I hear you. None of this happened until 5 minutes before we came on the air when police tear gassed everyone, and that's what set this off. This has been completely peaceful. It has now turned dangerous and violent as windows and buildings are now being smashed and you hear alarms going off. Now Indianapolis is now starting to feel a bit like Minneapolis tonight. Reporting live in downtown Indianapolis, I'm Cameron Riddle, RTV6.
Cameron, thank you, and be safe out there. Tonight, as you say, we are hearing from local black community leaders who say there are similarities between Indiana's largest city and Minnesota's largest city when it comes to putting measures into place to keep such tragedies from happening. I spoke with Indianapolis recorder, journalist, and community activist Marshawn Woolley.
Indianapolis could be Minneapolis. We again are a city that is caught in the middle of reform. There have been the meetings, there's been the discussion, but there hasn't been the implementation like there needs to be. Right now, we need to be focused on trying to make sure that the unheard are heard. And right now, protesting is the voice of the unheard. My hope for them is that the policies in Minneapolis that they pursued in trying to make sure this situation doesn't happen actually get implemented.
Woolley wants to see a community review of the Citizens Police Complaint Board, something Mayor Hogsett says needs to be addressed but hasn't been. Amanda.
And Mark, we are also learning more tonight about the charges against the former Minneapolis officer involved in George Floyd's death. ABC's Zoreen Shah has the latest.
For the fourth night in a row, violence in Minneapolis following a black man dying while being pinned to the ground by a white police officer. 500 National Guard soldiers deployed, an 8 o'clock curfew, but crowds on the street. All of this hours after former officer Derek Chauvin was arrested and charged with the murder of George Floyd.
Please, I can't breathe. Please, man. Please, man.
This video sparking national outrage, showing Chauvin digging his knee into Floyd's neck while he was handcuffed.
He's not resisting arrest or nothing.
Prosecutors say the defendant had his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds in total. 2 minutes and 53 seconds of this was after Mr. Floyd was non-responsive.
Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin has been charged by the Hennepin County Attorney's Office with murder and with manslaughter. We are in the process of continuing to review the evidence. There may be subsequent charges later.
ABC affiliate KSTP was there as Floyd's girlfriend reacted to the charges.
This is the piece of justice. This is the first piece, and it needed to. It needed to be done. It's time.
Other officers involved in Floyd's arrest, To Tao, Thomas Lane, and J. Alexander Kung, were fired.
They are under investigation. I anticipate charges.
Following charges against Chauvin, nationwide protests continued. These protests in Atlanta. And tonight, a newly found video of George Floyd shows him in his own words, talking about breaking the cycle of violence he witnessed.
One day it's going to be you and God. You going up or you going down.
Floyd's family says through a lawyer they want to see Chauvin face first-degree murder charges. They also want to see the other officers involved arrested. Zoreen Shah, ABC News, Los Angeles.
We are keeping track of the protests happening in downtown Indianapolis tonight. You're looking at live pictures right now. And what started as a peaceful protest has turned to be an attack on businesses and looting going on, as we've seen some smashed windows, including the Jack's Donuts near Monument Circle and the state capitol, and the surrounding businesses. Windows have been smashed in that area. We had seen people go into those businesses and then come back out again. We will keep track of the riots going on downtown. We have our Cameron Riddle down there. You can find the latest at theindychannel.com and on the RTV6 app as well.
We gotta take action. We gotta come together.
Tonight, protesters taking to the streets here in Indianapolis.
Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Only when someone's killed.
And in cities from coast to coast.
It should matter every day.
Now at 11. The message those marching want you to hear.
This is breaking news from RTV6, working for you.
Indianapolis among several American cities dealing with fallout from the recent death of George Floyd, a Minneapolis man who died in police custody. You're looking live right now at pictures in downtown Indianapolis where police are trying to disperse crowds. Like last night, the protests have turned violent with police having to use tear gas on those protesters. Things started to spiral out of control just over an hour ago. This is video from our photojournalist right in the thick of it. A fire set in the middle of Pennsylvania Street. Thank you so much for joining us tonight at 11. I'm Nicole Griffin.
And I'm Rafael Sanchez from my temporary home studio as we continue to social distance. Our city tonight is in crisis. Tonight, voices demanding action, demanding justice. At the same time, businesses are being vandalized. Tensions are high for the second straight night here in the Circle City. Let me take you outside right now to show you what is happening in Indianapolis. Tear gas in many sections of the downtown area. For the second night, police are having to deal with protesters, in many cases, who have gotten out of hand. The police turned to that tear gas to get the crowds to leave and just break them up and move them out of downtown Indianapolis. There are reports right now, Nicole, I just got a couple of calls of fires in the downtown area, as well as people shattering windows to vehicles and businesses. It is quite dangerous in this section of downtown. This is exactly what the mayor and police chief were hoping would not happen. They did not want to see this tonight. Even local clergy urged for a peaceful demonstration, but those calls, Nicole, were ignored.
In Raphael, our Kelsey Anderson begins our team coverage tonight. Kelsey, you've been in the thick of these protests all day long. How are these protesters reacting to tonight's event so far, and what are you seeing at this hour?
Hey, Nicole, so we have talked to several protesters who are walking by us as we're standing kind of back away from the action now after having some tear gas and pepper bullets kind of come in our area. So protesters, a lot of them are upset that this happened because they wanted to come out here for a peaceful protest. And it was peaceful for the first 7 hours. I would say it started about 2 o'clock. That's when we got out here. There was a couple protesters on the circle. They marched around the city for 7 hours. In groups of hundreds, maybe even thousands of people out here marching, trying to get their message across that Black Lives Matter. But then here on Market Street in Delaware, right around 9 o'clock outside the CCB, that's when things turned violent. We'll send it to the side of earlier today when we were live streaming all the events.
We plan on staying peaceful all night. We're not breaking down anything. Plan on staying as peaceful as possible. With that being said, if things get outrageous, hopefully they'll die down.
Where, as you can see here, we've got police in gas masks, and they've got their masks on. They just got on the intercom saying this is no longer a peaceful protest. Things did get a little out of hand right here, but the organizers did move everyone down to a different street. But as you can see, there are still some people here talking with police, yelling at police, trying to get everything. People are running. Okay. They are shooting. Mike, get back. Mike, get back. They are shooting now. Mike, get back. Go. There's someone arrested already. So that was a look from earlier today around 9 o'clock, again, just 2 hours ago. And things right here on this street where things started up at 9 o'clock have settled down. But on other streets, Pennsylvania, Raphael showed you earlier, there were fires. But looking down the alley now, I see that has kind of settled down a little bit. Looks like cars are now going down that street. But police are still out here, and they are still active today. But also out here with me today, starting today at 2 o'clock, was our colleague, my colleague, Megan Sanctorum. She's over at the War Memorial with an update for you.
Yeah, Kelsey, that's right. We're at the War Memorial right now, and it was pretty quiet. We actually moved north a little bit ago for safety reasons. Oh, and if you take a look, you can see the protest is actually moving up Pennsylvania. This is Indiana State Police. You can see them over there. So we were a couple blocks south of it. Oh, there are people running right behind us. We may need to step out of the way. So we're standing right behind our car right now. You can see Indiana State Police right in front of the War Memorial. There are some protesters across the street on Pennsylvania. That's what you're looking at right now. So this is a little bit north of where all of that action was earlier. And like I was saying, we actually moved north for safety reasons because we were kind of getting in the middle of a couple of very tense groups. We kept getting tear gassed, and we just moved out of the way here. And now it looks like some of the crowd is starting to move north. This isn't a super huge group. I'd say maybe 20 or 30 people over there. We'll stay out here, though, and keep watching this situation. We'll bring you updates as we get them. Reporting live, Megan Sanctorum, RTV6.
Megan, thank you so much. This does remain a fluid, breaking news, developing story. I can tell you that while Megan was talking, I was getting here at my location reports of now damage to the Whole Foods in downtown Indianapolis, as well as looting at the TJ Maxx on Illinois Street, as well as police cars having their windows shattered on Georgia Street, and even more damage being reported to businesses on Monument Circle. In fact, our Troy Washington spoke to some shop owners on Monument Circle earlier today, and they can't even begin to comprehend what is going on.
At least 30 businesses barely scraping by because of the COVID-19 pandemic, now shaken by this. Broken glass and looting made moving forward even more difficult.
This is devastating, and how do you recover from this? We were already 2 months behind.
It took the light of day to reveal the damage left behind after protesters took to the streets of Indianapolis, angry about the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis.
I don't know what the answer is, but this is not the answer. Destroying our downtown, destroying anything is not the answer.
It's especially hard to process for those who had to watch things unravel. Chris Carnavas is the owner of Jack's Donuts. He's closed today, cleaning up his shop. Last night, he watched helplessly as people stole from his store and broke out his windows.
It was like being in a war zone. I mean, there was, they were pepper spraying the whole entire downtown. I mean, there was fires everywhere, alarms going off, windows are being broken, stuff's being, turned upside down. I mean, this is just ridiculous.
Other shop owners are just as afraid.
There was a situation that was unjust. A man died, was murdered that shouldn't have been. If this continues, his death will go, there'll be no reason for it. Nobody will remember that name.
Window repair companies worked quickly to repair the damage, wondering if they'll be right back where they started tomorrow. Working for you downtown, Troy Washington, RTV6.
Troy, there is more damage downtown. There will have to be more to be repaired in the days to come. Mayor Joe Hogsett has promised to help those businesses impacted by the vandalism. He says he will help them rebound. That's what's happening in Indianapolis. But let me take you coast to coast to show you what is happening tonight all across America. Tonight, but first, let me take you to Johnson County. While some businesses are cleaning up damage caused by Friday night's protest, others boarded up in hopes of preventing damage. This is how the Greenwood Park Mall looked much of the day. The mall closed early today to recent events. The mall, of course, here in Johnson County. Greenwood police telling RTV6 that closing early and boarding up the storefronts was the mall's decision. Now from Johnson County to across America, as we're seeing clashes between the public and police around the country. Protests began in Minneapolis following the Monday death of George Floyd after a police officer pressed his knee on Floyd's neck for more than 8 minutes. The anger and outrage spread into other cities from coast to coast. Minneapolis is one of more than a dozen cities under curfew tonight. This is the second night of curfew for that city alone. But like last night, many people have ignored it, and the protests have turned violent. And that violence has seen a chain reaction. Protesters in New York City set fire to barricades in the middle of a street. Others just jumped over the flames. Also, several police and other vehicles were set on fire. Chaos in Chicago. Protesters were seen overturning a vehicle. Several people were throwing bottles, climbing onto cars, and damaging property. Officers took multiple people into custody. And protesters were back in the streets of Los Angeles. Several police cars were torched. People could see plumes of just black smoke rising into the sky from various locations. Los Angeles police have arrested more than 500 people so far.
In Raphael, tonight we are hearing from several community leaders who say the protests that we are seeing across the entire country are a result of several decades of frustration. And leaders say people are simply at a point where they are exploding.
And so this is not just about the broken glass that you see downtown. This is about people whose spirits have been broken,
who have been feeling that there has been a knee on their throat forever.
A group of community leaders, part of the African American Coalition of Indianapolis, and legislators they work with closely took time Saturday to discuss the bigger issues leading to protests like this one in Indianapolis.
Because we have a younger generations that know nothing but struggle, challenges, and poverty, and they get to see the inequities firsthand. None of us has ever seen a white person choked out or killed by the police on video. We've never seen that.
Underneath the anger and frustration, leaders say there are economic issues that are very real.
People don't have access to good jobs. They're living in unstable, substandard housing, don't have access to the necessities. And so people are looking for more than just meetings and discussions now. They're looking for very real, substantive actions, policies, things that are designed to help everyone. And I think the city has to understand is that this is not just a black issue.
The African American Coalition of Indianapolis has taken initiative to prioritize their own agenda. There are 5 key issues.
We have police reform and community violence. We're working on affordable housing, education reform, particularly the racial achievement gap, food insecurity, and then black business development.
They are working closely with legislators, but say this isn't just something politicians or government officials can fix.
What I would like to see is everyone just take a look in the mirror and say, what am I doing to suppress African Americans, people of color, whether if it's in my job, whether if it's in my community, and how can I take a personal accountability, a spiritual accountability to help and assist to make our community better.
Until the larger community feels it has a dog in the fight and speaks out for greater equity in healthcare, more employment and training, supporting the training that is going on with police, it will remain the same.
The coalition says they have made some progress with the use of force boards supported by the IMPD police chief and Indianapolis mayor, making sure citizens are represented, but there is still a lot of work ahead.
We're at a turning point for the city right now. We got to make some tough decisions and some very real commitments. What are we going to do?
And the leaders you just heard from say it's encouraging to see a diverse group of protesters on the streets in Indianapolis, not just black protesters. And this is another live look in downtown Indianapolis as police work to disperse those crowds of protesters at this hour. You're watching RTV6 News at 11. Coming up right after this break, we will check in back live with our Kelsey Anderson. Stay with us.
Tools.
Hey, this is Kelsey Anderson with WRTV6. We're here at the corner of Market in Delaware. This is where those riots, or where it got violent here. That's at the very beginning at 9 o'clock. But if you look down here, there's police activity now coming this way. Tear gas was just dispersed and it's kind of wafted its way down here. But as you can see, still very active down here in Indianapolis. Police have gone back and forth all night. We've seen IMPD officers on horses, on gators, in their cars, on foot. We've seen them everywhere, going in every which direction. So what has happened is when that large group of protesters dispersed here at Market in Delaware, they've all made their own smaller protests, and that's what's happened. And now they're having to go to all these several locations. So just over on the other street, Pennsylvania, we saw fires earlier. They've built barricades with trash cans and several different things. So still a very active scene here in Indianapolis. So we'll be sure to continue to update you on what's going on here. But for now, I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Kelsey, thank you so much. A very tough night in Indianapolis. We will keep on top of the breaking news, not only here on RTV6, but also online on the RTV6 app and the IndyChannel.com. For the second night, the city of Indianapolis is on edge. Protests, which the mayor hoped would end at 7, did not. Tonight, Call 6 Investigates has new details of the people arrested and the damage caused on that first night. The first night of the demonstration left a trail of damage in the heart of Indianapolis. Photographer Sean Byram captured these images of what began as a peaceful protest and led some protesters to clash with police. Among those arrested were people who live in North Carolina, Terre Haute, Liston, and Connorsville. People black and white, male and female. The damage to businesses? Expensive. The Sheraton Hotel downtown lost a window. The people who broke it posted that video on Facebook. The building at 30 South Meridian Street saw about $20,000 in vandalism. The Finish Line inside the mall was looted out of more than $40,000 in merchandise. And Twin Jewelers is out tens of thousands of dollars. Their entire inventory taken. These are snapshots of chaos in the capital city. Snapshots of people frustrated and furious. People angry with the state of race relations. Anxious with the slow progress. All emerging in the city and the state that prides itself on Hoosier hospitality. Among the people arrested on the first night, at least 2 of them had weapons seized during that protest. Most people arrested tonight and last night are facing multiple charges, including looting, rioting, or disorderly conduct charges. In some cases, they're facing all of those combined. Our coverage continues on the RTV6 app. You're watching RTV6 Indianapolis.
I'm Kelsey Anderson, live downtown as police continue to try to make it a safe place for everyone to be in. IMPD tweeting out, downtown is not safe at this time, and residents are advised to avoid the area. So let me walk you through what happened today. The protest started around 2 o'clock, and then we took several laps around Indianapolis from 2 to 7 o'clock, walking around with protesters. I don't know if you can hear that right now. Some kind of shots being fired. We know that they have been shooting off tear gas and rubber pellets and things like that. So what you're seeing right now is officers running to their cars. This has kind of been the epicenter where they all have meeting up, and right there is where it all started. That is where the protest turned violent, right here at the corner of Market in Delaware. And we did talk to several people today who said this will stay peaceful because that's how they wanted it to be. But of course, once a few people get involved, things escalate very quickly, and that's what happened here. Police were, from what we heard from our crew on the other side of the street, was that someone was throwing fireworks at police officers, and that is when they shot back with their tear gas and their rubber pellets and things like that. So still, things are pretty active down here. Again, IMPD saying this is not a safe area to be in. Do not come down here. What they're having to deal with is that large protest dispersed, and now there's small protests around the city happening right now. But that's what we're looking at right now. But for now, I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Kelsey, thank you so much for your coverage tonight, and we do have much more on this weekend's protest here in Indianapolis and across the country right now on the IndyChannel.com and the RTV6 News app. You can see our live streams in real time on events as they unfold, and also look at other stories, pictures, and videos about this developing story. And tonight, Governor Eric Holcomb is also weighing in on Friday's violent protests. The governor saying in a statement, in the days ahead, peaceful assembly will be important if we are able to make progress. Violence and vandalism will set us back in our shared desire to resolve differences. Kyle.
And Nicole, another check of that 7-day forecast. Beautiful weather tomorrow. We got some sunshine out there, 70 degrees. We'll be in the mid-70s on Monday, and we're going to keep it dry here the next several days. That next chance for some rain coming our way the second half of Wednesday with that summer heat.
Kyle, thank you so much. Raphael, thank you for your coverage tonight. Thank you, everyone at home, for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Have a great night.
All right, Dave. Dave, come this way. Okay, Dave, to your left, to your left. All right. Okay. Hey, we are right in the middle of this. As I said, we tried to get we were at the back, and now we're right in the middle. As you can see, Jack's Donuts, we've done stories on that place. We're trying to back up. We were so much for social distancing, but Jack's Donuts right now, they are breaking the windows. Those are residences above this. I know the guy who owns this Jack's Donuts actually lives in this building. This is what's happening live right now in downtown Indianapolis. All of this tonight, Daryl, all of this tonight, I hear you. None of this happened until 5 minutes before we came on the air when police tear gassed everyone, and that's what set this off. This has been completely peaceful. It has now turned dangerous and violent as windows and buildings are now being smashed and you hear alarms going off. Now Indianapolis is now starting to feel a bit like Minneapolis tonight. We got 10 minutes to our live shot, bud.
Okay. We should probably go then.
13 exactly.
Want to head back then?
Probably should.
Okay.
We're walking back to the car, buddy. Yeah, we got a live shot with him. And now, what should we, I mean, I think it's risky to have Kelsey over here with the light on and everything. We can try though.